Alright, there's supposed to be professionals that deal with cases like mine, but none of those professionals did their jobs. The term mentally ill, that's an insult. It's always an insult. When people call themselves mentally ill, I correct them on it. Don't insult yourself like that. When you say mentally ill, people don't think of you as a person. They think of you as Ted Kaczynski, or Jeffrey Dahmer, or Jack the Ripper. Don't insult yourself like that. You're a human being. For me, I was overwhelmed. When I had to go speak to the police when Natalie disappeared, I explained to them what triggers me, so that they would not do those things, so that they could get the most useful information out of me that they possibly could, so that they wouldn't affect my ability to communicate what was going on. Did they do that? No. Matter of fact, they did the opposite. They went out of their way to trigger me at every point. Laura Nelson, she has a son. And she went to the school because the school was calling her once a week, saying that her son had been triggered. So she explained to them what her son's triggers were. And then they were calling her every day. This isn't a coincidence. The people at the school decided that they didn't like her son. They had it in their head that he was retarded. And they didn't want that retard in their school. And that's the way that it was in their minds. That's still the way it is in their minds. Meanwhile, he is probably the smartest kid in his whole school. Of course, he can't speak, whereas I can. However, even if he could speak, the only thing that would make it so that he was heard is his mother. His mother, Laura Nelson, she could come forward with her voice. She could simply come forward and tell the truth. And then maybe I could be heard. But she's not going to. It's not that she can't, it's that she's afraid of what will happen to her son if she stands up to the police, and that is what she'd be doing at this point. Now, I'd like to say that I can respect that decision, but I can't. Because that decision affects her son. It affects millions of people worldwide who are autistic. Because of what happened to me, people think it's okay to harm people who are autistic. To harm people that are different. Not that they didn't before, but now it's an even greater issue. She's not going to live forever. Her husband is not going to live forever. Her son will eventually end up in a placement or a home. There are a lot of people who did bad things, wrong things. Now, in order to do all the things that I needed to do in the last 3 years, first of all, I needed to know how. When I went to meet Miss Natalie on the 16th of December 2017, I took my computer with me and I took my phone with me. Now, had I known how to take screenshots, we wouldn't have even needed to meet in person. I would have just sent her screenshots of the things that people were saying and sending me. The threats against my friends and my family, as well as myself. But I didn't know how. And after a year of trying to get someone to help and being suicidal because they kept blowing me off with pretty words like you gotta love yourself, it's obvious they didn't actually give a shit. I love you, Sean. Sure the fuck you don't. Peaches, don't tell me you love me. You fucking lied. All of you who claim to love me outright lied. Then I have to deal with people who I don't even fucking know. But I have to hope and pray that they're not completely full of shit. Like the police, Shannon Alvarado, Cara Mia, aka Cara Rogers. Every time that I decided to go to the police instead of killing myself, I got put on suicide watch. I'm not trying to kill myself. I'm trying to get the fucking cops to do their goddamn jobs. They can coordinate across state borders, across jurisdictional borders, to destroy an innocent man's life and protect other police officers who did wrong things. Meanwhile, I'm not even allowed to show evidence of what happened in that jurisdiction or in that state, in any court date. I went to every single court date, over 20 of them, over 20 court dates, and I made it to every single one of them, every single one. They were eating up my money, my ability to take care of myself, my ability to feed myself, and people who were helping me out were investing their own money into helping me. So I needed to make sure that money didn't go to waste, but there are selfish people like Lanny and Gline who didn't care. It didn't make any difference to her. Dan Favorite spent some money to help me to get there, to try to get me somewhere safe. My issue with Dan Faber is that no matter what happened, he always took the other person's side. Didn't bother asking me what was going on. But he had no problems whatsoever berating me, treating me like shit, and calling me names. I'm attempting to do all of the things that the lawyers were supposed to do, that the police were supposed to do, that my therapists were supposed to do, that doctors were supposed to do, and I have to do those things all myself without those resources. And then I get treated like shit because people spent their own money to try to help me. Well, if they'd used their words instead of their pocketbooks, I wouldn't have needed that money. I had my own income. I am disabled. Now, as far as a mailbox, that mailbox needs to be permanent. If that environment is scary, I'm not going to try to get a mailbox there. Shannon Alvarado's house is scary as shit. She's an alcoholic. It's difficult to deal with. Her screaming at her boyfriend every single night. It was difficult for me to deal with. I need a safe environment, not an abusive one. I needed my housing back, and I needed help to do that. People don't understand that I was overwhelmed before I left for Virginia in 2016. I can't function when I'm overwhelmed. I needed help. I don't need people telling me what to do. I have too much on my plate to do any of it without help. Now, after going to over 20 court dates and not having the money to get to my next court date, having no help from the police, and the people who claimed that they would help just talked. Hundreds of people offered to help, but I had to search through a whole bunch of threats against my life to find those people. I still haven't gone through all of them. There's still a lot of threats on there. Police wouldn't do a thing. Instead, they went out of their way to make sure that I was targeted further by lying and slandering my name and assaulting me repeatedly, using suicide watch as their excuse. I'm suicidal for a reason. I will have to deal with this for the rest of my life because Alicia Bollinger, Natalie Bollinger, and Maddie Boa didn't want to tell the truth. Their drugs were more important than a human life, and they still are. To my mother, her drugs were more important than the lives of her 4 children. For my dad, his drugs were more important than the lives of his 2 boys. Meanwhile, we got child molesters like Andrew Witcher and Michael Albert who get to walk free, who get the help of their families, even knowing what it is that they did. People like Ted Bollinger being protected by his victims because they're family. I exposed Ted Bollinger for a reason, because I was being assaulted for things I didn't do. I was having my life and the lives of my friends and family threatened for things that I didn't do, for things that they didn't do. Now, I do my best to show as much evidence as I can, but there's a lot of it. And the police keep stealing it to prevent me from being able to use it to take their fellow officers to court. Police in other states did everything in their power to do this. Now, there's one example I'd like to give you because it's right here on my YouTube channel. Officer Schneider. This is the officer who, when my backpack was stolen by a homeless man who was obviously on drugs, Officer Schneider, who was right there, 2 witnesses right there, the person who stole my things right there, and Officer Schneider let that man go, didn't bother to investigate it at all. So I called in to complain about Officer Schneider and to get an actual investigator there. Instead, it was Officer Schneider who called me back. Officer Schneider. Imagine that. Then, later on, when I'm speaking to officers at the Starbucks there, they don't know an Officer Schneider. Imagine that. I spent 3 weeks up there trying to get my vehicle moved, trying to get just enough gas to get it moved. And instead, all of these helpers wanted me to jump through a bunch of hoops that I'd already jumped through. And for 3 weeks, I jumped through these hoops, and my vehicle didn't move. It was stuck there. Meanwhile, as much as I would love to, I have to go through all of the evidence, and I have to sit there with my phone and record the evidence off of the screen, and then find a place with internet where I can sit down and actually download it. And here in Chapel, Nebraska, that could take hours. A 15-minute video at one of the places I was at took 2.5 hours. A 15-minute video at another place that I was at took at least 45 minutes. The internet here sucks. So goes it. The fact is, most of the people who offered to help, the biggest issue that they had was money. That's what they threw in my face when they didn't keep their word. Well, I spent money on this and I spent money on that. That's right. And if you'd used your words way back when it made a difference, that money wouldn't have been necessary, because I could have gotten my money back, my income back. People say you're a drain on society. No, I'm not. Society is a drain on me. Society is a drain on the poor. Society is a drain on the homeless. Your shitty assumptions and your excuses for harming others. You guys can't pretend that it's not going on. You take part in it. Therefore, every one of you who pretends that this isn't happening is a liar. Every one of you. In the South, I was asking about the racism that I noticed. How the white managers eat in one area and the black workers eat in another area. And black workers, they all had different reasons